Good morning and welcome to California Woodcrafters. Thank you for stopping by my channel. My name is David Castillo. Here recently I was watching another person on YouTube, and forgive me for not remembering who this person was, but the comment was made that if you're going to be successful on YouTube that you need to teach something. And on my channel, basically, they're not really instructional videos. In reality, you're just being entertained while you watch me create different projects. And while you can, learn some skill or techniques or certain things that I've done, it's not intentional. It basically is, an entertainment kind of aspect of putting up content. So this person that I was listening to was stating that in order to be successful on YouTube, you have to teach something, which kind of set off a light bulb in my head. I was a woodworking construction teacher at the high school level for 28 years. And I kind of didn't connect the two, if you will. But one thing that I did do was I had to teach my class during COVID. And during that time, we had to get really innovative when it comes to how we presented a lesson to kids at home on their computers. This was especially difficult for us who had classrooms or classes that were hands-on. We did the best we could to keep our students engaged and give them content that was valuable and added to their life experience and gave them a certain amount of knowledge. Of course, the hands-on stuff or the actual part that was lacking was them, actually putting hands-on and demonstrating that they can effectively use the tools and equipment in the classroom. We had to assume that we were doing a good enough job with giving them the knowledge, on a media-based platform that was totally foreign to us. So what most of us came up with was basically doing demonstrations of the tools and equipment in the classroom from a standpoint of trying to get our students to remember the safety procedures, the different parts of the equipment, and also being entertained by watching us do projects in the classroom. You can argue the viability of that or, how good that was for our students. But, we got through it, and then the following year we had students back in the classroom and were able to actually build on what we had given them the year before. So what I wanted to do was post these videos that I did in my classroom, which are bare bones basic for the beginner to be introduced to a particular hand tool, power tool, or stationary equipment. So if these videos can help anyone out there who is, considering, getting into woodworking or needs to look at it from a different aspect as far as how to use a particular item more effectively, hopefully these can help you in some way. If you're out there, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and as always, God bless, and we'll see you on the next one.
Okay, so in this video, what I want to do is do a little bit of show and tell, kind of. I'm going to show you the different types of hand tools that we use in the wood shop or construction class. And then there'll be a PowerPoint that goes along with this as far as how to safely use these tools. I'll be demonstrating some of those as we go through it. Okay, so what I'm going to start with is measuring or marking tools. These are all tools you'll find in the cabinet in our shop. So basically, all of you have learned what this is, and it's just a typical bench rule. I'm going to turn the right side up. You know, a 1-inch, 12-inch bench rule. This is made out of wood, and most of you have used these for the projects that we've worked on so far. What I want to say is, as you watch this video, is please do not destroy these in any way. Don't use them as drumsticks. Don't bang them against the table. They're not very strong. If you abuse them, they won't last very long, so please don't abuse these. If you possibly can avoid breaking them anyway, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. All right. So some of you have seen this one. I'll turn that around. As you can tell, it has, right where it has a 16 on the end here, you can see that number 16. That's a standard rule on that side. And each one of these other ones, I'm going to turn it this way so you guys can see it. This one is the one that's typically used, I'm trying to get this thing to focus. There it goes. Typically used in architectural drawings. This is a 1/4 scale. If you go from 0 and you notice that that has a number 2 on it, that's actually 2 feet. So every 1/4 inch is equal to a foot. And that's the 1/4 inch scale. And if you go to this side, you have a 1/8 inch scale. So that means that every 1/8 inch is equal to 1 foot. Typically these are used for architectural drawings, engineering drawings, and there's a 16th scale, 32nd scale also. And there's also a 1 1/2 scale if you want to scale things up. And that's what we use these for. So it gives you the measurements already. There's different measurements on each of the sides here. So these are here and ready for you to use if you should need them for any reason. If you pick one up and you're not sure how to use them, just call me over and I'll explain how they're supposed to be used. Okay, so next, so here's the next marking tool that you'll find in the shop. This is called a combination square, and the reason for that is it does a couple things. First of all, it slides, so you can use it as a gauge. Please don't remove this handle from the tongue. Leave it on there, don't take it off, because inevitably they get lost. Okay, it has a couple different right on the handle. It just fits inside there and then twist. So stay put. And you can use this for scribing lines. That goes there. It also has a level on it. You can see the level right there. If you needed to level something in a pinch, you could use this combination square. The other thing it does is it marks a 45-degree line. Now, if you wanted to make sure that this was a true 45 or you needed a true 45, you would use this to do it because it's a true 45. Now, sometimes if you use this tool, which is a speed square, if you notice it's a 45-degree angle and you mark it, because these get beat up, sometimes that mark isn't true, so you're better off using a combination square, okay, for marking your 45-degree angles. The speed square is used for a lot of different things, and you'll learn more about that in the Construction 2 and Construction 3 class, exactly what the uses of a speed square is. Okay, so the last marking or measuring tool, I shouldn't say the last, the next one we're going to look at is this one right here. And some of you seen these, your dad or grandpa has one in the garage, and basically it is a square. This side, this tongue is 23 inches, 24 inches from end to end, 23 inches inside. Then here it's 16 inches from here to here, and there's a reason for that. When you're doing layout and you're laying studs for a framed wall, a wooden frame wall, you would either go 16. You would either go 16 or 24, and that's what this is for. Now, there is a lot of information right here that you could use these for, and all of these lines determine the length of rafters and some other things, stairs and stuff like that. So we won't get into that, but you can use this for making sure that whatever you're building is at a true 90-degree angle, because this, of course, is a true 90-degree angle. This is called a framing square. And the last one, you guys have all used these. This is a measuring tape, okay? Now, some measuring tapes are different than others. This one has fractions of an inch, so it's kind of a cheating, it kind of allows you to cheat and not know how to read a measuring tape. Not all measuring tapes are like this, so you have to know how to read a measuring tape, and we talked about that in class, and there's also a PowerPoint that explains how to read a typical standard rule. Okay, so those are the measuring and marking tools that we have. Now I'm going to go on to cutting tools that we use in class. Okay, so now we're going to cutting tools. And the most basic cutting tool that we have in class to start with are wood files. Now, I do have some metal files, but if you need a metal file for whatever reason, I do have some, but these are wood files. You do not use these on metal, just wood. Okay, these are wood files only. Now, we call this a rasp because, as you can tell, it has a very coarse cut to it, right? Those ridges, those little edges are really, really coarse. So we call this a rasp. And this is a quarter round because it has a round edge and it also has a flat edge. The next one is a file. Now this has a smoother edge on it. And this is also a quarter round. It has a quarter round edge here and a flat edge here. Now, if you want to take off a lot of material, you're going to use the rasp. If you want to take off less material, finer, then you use a file. And then you'll eventually graduate to sandpaper, and we'll talk about sandpaper on another video. Okay. This is also a wood file, but it is a flat file, so if you need to take off material and you need it to be smooth and as straight as you can use this file. Now these files are in the toolbox. You can get those out and use those if you need to. Okay, so the next set of tools are hand planes, and we'll start with this. This is called a block plane. It has a knife that goes right inside there. Now, typically these need to remain as sharp as possible, and I will sharpen them from time to time to make sure that they're pretty sharp. And this is used to cut along this edge and give you a nice smooth square edge. This is called a block plane. Okay, it has a few adjustments. You can adjust the angle of the knife by moving this back and forth, and you can see the blade is going back. You can adjust how tight the blade is right here, and this knob right here kind of loosens it so this moves. This adjusts the depth, so it pushes the blade down so that you get more of the blade exposed down here. Okay, and you really don't need a lot of the blade exposed because it's not going to do the job that it's intended. You want to take off a very, very thin piece of wood as you're working with a block plane. Now, we also have these bigger planes, and it's the same concept. It has a knife, it has two handles, has an adjustment so you can move it down. So this is if you want to make a lot deeper cuts or a lot longer cuts. She has a nice long flat surface. We will use these in class, and again, the blade has to be sharp. If it is not sharp, it's not going to work properly. So this is a hand plane. This particular one is a smooth plane because of the length. There's a jack plane which is smaller. It's not quite as long, and then you have the block plane that I showed you earlier. Now this is called a spoke shave. It has a blade that goes in there. That blade also has to be very, very sharp in order for it to work properly, and I'll do a demonstration on these later. I just wanted to give you an example of what these are. okay, a spoke shave. Okay, we have two types of hand drills. These are drills that are not powered by electricity. They're called hand drills for a reason. Okay, this drill works like an egg beater, an old-fashioned egg beater. The drill bit goes in right here. This loosens and the teeth open so you can put a blade in there. Then you tighten it down and then you just turn this. Now I have one of these in my shop that I use quite frequently because sometimes you want to make a hole and you want to do it slowly and carefully so you don't over drill it, and this is a perfect tool to do that with. With a power drill, you have a tendency to drill farther than you really want to go sometimes, so you can really control this, where with a power drill you can't control it as well. So it's always good to have a hand drill in your tool assortment. They're just great to have. Again, I use this type of hand drill. I have one at home. I use it quite often. Okay. This one is called a bit brace. Okay. The drill bit just goes right in here, and the same thing applies. It loosens here, and you can change the direction of the clutch to go the opposite way by just turning this, right? And then it'll go the opposite way. Okay. Put the drill bit in and turn it that way. So this is called a bit brace. Okay, now this is a smaller coping saw, and as you can see, it actually has a really fine, sharp blade on it for making intricate cuts. The only disadvantage is that the distance between the blade and the end of it here is very small, so making a curve cut has to be on a very small piece of material, and that's what this is for. This is another coping saw. Okay, so the next set of tools that we're going to be looking at is our types of hand saws. And the first one you're going to be using is this one. It's a coping saw. Now this saw is designed to be used cutting downward on your material. You shouldn't cut this way, right? You shouldn't cut this way. Your material should be laying flat and you're cutting down on the material. The teeth of the blade always point towards the handle, right? You never want the teeth of the blade to point away from the handle. Okay, this is a coping saw. Now, you'll find that as we move forward and we start to use the portable jigsaw or we start to use the scroll saw, that those two types of electrical tools are a lot better and a lot faster than using this tool. But there are some times where a coping saw does a better job. So remember, this is a coping saw. Okay, this is called a keyhole saw. It has a pretty rigid blade on it, and if you wanted to make curved cuts, you could. Unlike the coping saw, you can make really good curved cuts. With this one, they're not as good, not as smooth, pretty rough. We do have a couple of these in the shop though. Anyway, this is called a keyhole saw. Okay, the next one we have is called a back saw. Now this saw is usually used with a miter box, or if you're cutting real precise cuts that you don't want the blade to bend, that's what this is for. Okay, it has a rigid back on it so the blade doesn't bend as much as a regular saw does. And for this you want to use for exact precise cuts that you're doing by hand. Right, this is called a back saw. Okay, this saw is typical to what we have in the shop, and if you notice, it has some pretty stout teeth there, and they actually go left and right. And this is a combination saw, so you can use it for ripping and you could use it for cross cutting. The saws that I'm going to show you now are bigger than this, but they're only used as crosscut saws because of the number of teeth they have. That means that the more teeth on a saw blade per inch, that means if it has more teeth, it's used for going across the grain. If it has less teeth, that means it's used for going with the grain or ripping through the grain of the wood. So you want to note that, and you want to keep that information so that you understand the difference between a crosscut and a rip cut saw. That's important. All right, so these two right here are wood chisels. This is about 3/4 of an inch or so. This one right here is about 1/4 of an inch. These are pretty beat up. They get beat up because people abuse them. If you need some that are very, very sharp, I have some special ones that I put away. I do try to sharpen these though. So these will be also in the toolbox for you to use. If you need one that is very sharp and you ask for it, I will give it to you. The only problem is that you need to return it as soon as you finish using it, because I don't want them to get abused like these ones that are in the toolbox. I don't want the good ones to get abused. So make sure that you return them when you use them. Okay, we also use screwdrivers in the classroom, and you could tell that one right there is called a Phillips head screwdriver. This one is a pretty good size one. I do have smaller ones if you need them. Now, the key to using a screwdriver, and this is called a flathead or spaded. This is called, some people call it a estrella in Spanish. The key to using a screwdriver is you select the right one for the type of screw you have. If you use one that's too big, you're going to strip the screw. If you use one that's too small, you're going to strip the screw also, so it has to be the correct size. So don't just pick out any one. Make sure that the screwdriver fits all the way down into the screw and it doesn't wobble. You got a nice tight fit so that you're able to move that screw into the piece of material without stripping it. So Phillips, flathead, same thing applies to a flathead. You want to use the correct screwdriver for the size of screw that you're using. Make sure you do that so you don't ruin your project by stripping a screw before it goes all the way down, and you have all kinds of issues that you have to work through. Okay, Phillips, flathead screwdriver. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clamp this piece of wood to the table. First thing I'm going to do is mark it. I'm going to give it a measurement. I'm just going to mark it so that I could cut it and you guys can see the process for using a handsaw. Okay, so there's my mark. I'm going to adjust this so you can actually see what I'm doing here. Okay, so I'm going to use this bar clamp to clamp to the table. Let's see here. There we go. So it just fits underneath there, and then I raise it up. And let me move this camera so you can actually see where the bar clamp is. Hold on 1 second. And there is the bar clamp. Okay, clamp to the bottom of the table. And then on the top of the table there. Now, you want to tighten it down pretty tight just by turning this. Okay. Now, once it's on and you're ready to cut, I'll give you guys a good angle of what I'm doing here. Okay, that should work okay. Now see how it moves still? And that's the problem, because you don't want it to move back and forth. Now you'll see when I put the C-clamp on, that is not going to move. Okay, you can see that this is not moving very much at all. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that. I'm going to use a coping saw to start with to show you how it's used. And it's not about pressure. It's about revolutions or the movement of the saw through the material. When you get to the end of your cut, you want to slow down. Okay, that's using a coping saw. As you can tell, it's not a very straight cut. So I'm going to mark this one more time. I'm going to use one of the other saws to cut it again. And that's a lot straighter cut than what I got with the coping saw. Just as an example, I'm going to use the hand drill. I'm going to put just a regular standard drill bit in there, and I'm tightening it down. You can see, you got to make sure you're going the right way, okay, when you're using it. There you go. So I want to show you how to adjust this. Okay, and you can see that the blade is going out. Okay, and you want to get it to where it's even. Then push this down that way and you'll lock it down. So it should cut. So normally when I'm using a plane, I don't come straight at it, I come at an angle. And you can see that the block plane does a really good job of cutting, and that's probably too far down, so I'm going to adjust it by moving this knob back the other way. And now I should be able to get a finer cut. There you go. Okay, that's a finer cut with the block plane. Now the hand plane, the smooth plane works the same. That's a little bit finer. So depending on how much material you want to take off, you'll make an adjustment on the blade. And you can see that that's a lot finer. Okay, now with